This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 217.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host of the BiggerPockets Podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. Brandon Turner. What's up, man?
Hey, not a whole lot. You know, I lost a lot of weight in the last couple of weeks.
I can see, especially in your face.
I did. So what are you going to make fun of now? Look at this clean shaven.
Nothing to make fun of. I mean,
nothing.
Look rugged and semi clean cut.
Yeah, you know, for those who
not
don't
quite as dirty as you were, and I
homeless.
see that you removed all the homelessness from your face. So.
I did. So I lost a good 20 pounds worth of facial hair over the last couple of days.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You traveled the world by boat. On a boat.
I did. It was pretty awesome. So I'm glad to be home, back in the saddle, doing what I love doing.
What was your favorite place on your little cruise?
Oh, good question. I don't know. So my favorite place is actually before going on the cruise ship. I love Miami Beach, like South Beach. I just love that area. I could live there. I'm going to say probably Grand Turk. I just like that beach a lot in that island or that
nice
area. Yeah.
Never been, but one of these days. What about me?
You've been on a Caribbean cruise too. What did you like best?
Being on a Caribbean cruise where a phone doesn't work.
Yes, that's pretty amazing.
No internet access for a week. That was nice.
Yeah. You know what's cool is I think I said this a couple weeks ago, maybe not, maybe it was on a webinar, but I came home from this cruise and I was on 2 weeks. A week of that or 10 days was no cell phone, no internet, nothing, right? I get home and my checking account has a whole lot more money than when I left because rent came in and the systems that we have in place, right? So that's the beautiful thing about real estate. I think it perfectly illustrates it is, yes, it takes work and you have to maintain it, but it wasn't reliant on me, working a number of hours. Like that's the beauty of passive income.
Well, and we talk about that in today's show, right? The 80-20.
We do.
You've got systems built so that you're doing 20% of the work now for 80% of the value, and you've got other folks in there who are doing the rest of it. Yep. And that's why today's show, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
Our guest today is not a real estate investor. He's a marketer and an author. We covered just a really important topic as it pertains to building and scaling a business, any kind of business, really. But for those of you guys listening who are in active real estate investors, there's so much you can take away from this show, and so many little things that if you sit and really think about what we get into, you can really slim down all the stuff that you're doing, and use that to value to add value to what your business is.
That's true. Yeah, we talk about things like direct mail marketing. We talk about how to some good practices for that. Some of the ways why testing matters so much, and the conversation towards the end of the interview where we talk about how to make $10,000 an hour. If you've never heard this concept, will blow your mind. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we get into that, you guys, this is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 217. You can check out the show notes at BiggerPockets.com/show 217. If you have not yet already left us a rating, review on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, however you're listening, please do that. That really does help us. And please do spread the word about the podcast. We do appreciate that. Before we go on, why don't we get to today's quick tip?
All right, today's quick tip is something that we've talked about before, but I want to just reiterate it. First of all, your BiggerPockets profile. Go take a look at it. What does it show? Does it show you as a professional person, like you're somebody that people want to do business with, or does it, there's a picture of you with your shirt off doing the peace sign or something stupid, right? Not just a picture. Is there a video? If you're a pro member, you can upload a video to your profile, which is awesome. If you, do you have what your goals are, what people can help you with, what you're looking for, what you have to offer? Really go fill that thing out in full because people do look at your profile.
It's the best way to network. It's the best way to find possible partners, deals, opportunities. Fill out the profile. And that's great. Awesome. All right, guys. Today's guest is Perry Marshall, author of 80-20 Sales and Marketing, How to Work Less and Earn More. And the title couldn't be more apropos. Let's bring him in. Perry, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
It's great to be on BiggerPockets. Thank you for having me today. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so
Super
as
excited.
yeah, as we mentioned a little bit probably during the intro, and I'll say it here live to you, like 80/20 Sales and Marketing, that book, when I read that, actually, I got it on Audible and I listened to it, and it's one of the very few books in my life I've ever listened to over and over and over. I think I listened to it like 10 times, because every time I was like, if I could just master this, everything else in my life would be better. It's almost like I took the 80/20 rule too in terms of a book, right?
And 80 times on the podcast, before the podcast, he'd be like, Josh, got to read this book. This book's amazing. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. And it's fantastic. The concepts are great. Yeah. So we're pumped.
We are. So why don't we, for those who have not read the book, and even if you have, why don't we just start at the very beginning? I mean, who are you? Where'd you come from? How'd you get into the business world? And then we'll go into what 80/20 means.
So I'm Perry Marshall, and I live in Chicago. Got a family of 6. 4 regular kids, 2 adopted kids, wife, car, mortgage, all that stuff. Well, 20 years ago, I was an engineer, and I got laid off, and my wife was 3 months pregnant, and I had 2 choices: either move away from Chicago and find an engineering job somewhere else, or go into sales. So I went into sales, and I ate bologna sandwiches and ramen soup for a couple of years. It was pretty thin, okay? Or baked potatoes and salsa. That's another cheap food that you can get.
That is.
And my life finally started to turn around when I discovered direct marketing, which back then it was like the redheaded stepchild. Now it's everywhere. Now it's websites, and everybody measures things and everybody tests things, but that was pretty new back then. And it really propelled me forward. And fast forward a few years, I worked at a company. The company got sold. I got some stock options, and basically said, wow, what if I really got good at this? And so I just completely immersed myself in mastering marketing. Like, I'm going to get really, really, really good at this. Well, about 6 months after I hung out my shingle, Google AdWords came out. And I learned about it pretty early, and I had enough background to realize, hey, wait a minute, this is like caveman discovers fire. This is friggin' amazing. How come nobody's talking about this? How come they're not shouting it from the rooftops? But the world was just not there yet. Well, to make a long story short, I ended up writing the world's best-selling book on internet advertising, which is Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords. And also I'm known for another book called Ultimate Guide to Facebook Advertising. And so lots of people in the marketing space knew who I am, like all the pay-per-click kind of guys, they know who I am, and people in Google AdWords, and to lesser extent Facebook. Well, the thing was about a year after I discovered AdWords, I picked up Richard Koch's book, The 80/20 Principle, and I read this book, and I got to page 14, and he made this offhand remark that he never really expanded on later, but it set my mind on fire. He kind of sent me tumbling down a rabbit trail, and here's what it was. It was that 80/20, the 80/20 principle, which says that 20% of what you do gets you 80% of your results, and 80% of what you do only gives you 20%. What I realized was this was deeply connected to something that people in science called chaos theory. And chaos theory is actually this very well-developed science, and it's like how windshields cracks, like a crack spreads through your windshield, or how avalanches work, or how weather works.
How the BiggerPockets podcast works. Chaos.
Yes. How the branching patterns of trees. And what I suddenly realized was, wait a second, there's an 80/20 inside every 80/20. There's another one, and there's another one, and there's another one. Now Richard didn't really talk about this, but I realized that this was true. And also, Richard's book it totally changed my life, because I had thought that 80/20 was just this little business rule of thumb that happens to be true for some strange reason. Like, I remember when I first heard about it, maybe 5 years before, and I printed out a sales report, and I'm like, I'll be darned, it's true. But then I stopped there. I didn't go any further. It was just like, oh yeah, whatever. but what I realized, no, this is a master formula of cause and effect. It affects everything. And so not only is it's like a master formula that it's like MC Escher, like there's a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern. It actually gets kind of trippy. And what I did was I realized that, hey, wait a minute. So I was trying to figure out Google AdWords, right? It was this weird new beast, and it didn't really make a lot of sense to a lot of people. A lot of people spend a lot of money. I realized that everything in Google AdWords that you did that worked because of 80/20. In fact, 80/20 was the master formula. You've got all these columns. You got impressions and clicks and cost per click and all these different ad groups. All of it was 80/20. And the secret was finding the 80/20 levers. So in a Google AdWords account, you could spend weeks optimizing stuff that basically would amount to polishing turds. Or you could spend a few minutes every day doing, okay, do this. Okay, and guess what? Right there, at minute 20, you just passed the point of diminishing returns. So stop and go do something else.
Yeah.
And come back tomorrow. And it totally revolutionized my life. Well, about 5 years ago, the AdWord book is out. The 80/20 book is out. I'm a fairly famous marketing consultant. I'm speaking all over the world. I said, you know what? Being sort of like being the spokesman for Google AdWords is getting less and less fun because Google, you know why they say don't be evil?
Why?
Because they're evil.
Oh, come on. Come on.
And I said, you know what? I wonder, I don't know if this will work or not, but I wonder if I could create a whole identity around 80/20, because this is really the secret sauce. Like if I could teach the world 80/20, it would be like teaching a man to fish instead of giving him a fish.
Hey, Harry, really quick before you go on, because you're going to keep going, and I gotta whirl you in, man. You're like a whirlwind. I love this. Really quickly, for people who don't know, Google AdWords, those are the ads on the side and top of your Google search results. For those folks that are unaware of Facebook ads, Facebook has their own little ads within there as well. Can you dive in a little bit more on the 80/20 within the 80/20? I think, it's fascinating. And I do think most people get the basic premise of 80/20, 80%, 20% results in 80% of the results. Can you give us a concrete example of that kind of inner chaos?
Yes. Okay. So if you own 100 properties, 20% of your income comes from 80 of them, and 80% of your income comes from 20 of them. It's pretty much inevitable. It's like a law of physics. If you hire 100 salespeople, 20 of them will make 80% of the sales, and the other 80 will make 20% of the sales, which means the 20 good salespeople are 16 times better at selling than the other 80. It's not 4x, it's 16x. Okay. So like winners really win big and losers really lose big. And there's a lot more losers than winners. And it's kind of binary. Okay. Well, and this is true. Just everything I said, it's true everywhere. It's true of the sap running through the tree outside in your front yard. It's the traffic on the roads in your town. 20% of the traffic runs on 80% of the roads. 80% of the traffic runs on 20% of the roads. 80% of the traffic in your house and the dirt on your carpets is on, 20% of the carpets. And it goes on and on and on. But so here's the 80/20 inside the 80/20. So I've got 100 apartment buildings, and 80% of my income comes from 20% of them. 80% of the 80% comes from 20% of the 20%, which means 4% make you 64%. But then it's true again. 80 of the 80 comes from 20, or the 20 of the 20. Well, if you do the math, it's actually 50% of your results comes from 1% of what you do, or 1% of what you own.
Wow.
Now, you can also flip it upside down and you can go, well, instead of looking at profits, let's look at losses, or let's look at product returns, or let's look at product defects, or let's look at people who are late on their rent, or people who default on loans. It's like whether you're looking at the good end of stuff or the bad end of stuff, 80-20 is true. And so there end up being these huge levers in these tiny little areas where, wow, we can fix so many problems by doing so little.
So
Makes sense.
A couple quick examples in my life that I've seen of this. First of all, like the 80-20 with the property, totally true, right? I read that, and then I started looking at my properties, and I realized, yeah, I have 50 some units right now, and the vast majority of my income comes from the same 10 units. Like I've got a 5-plex, and I've got, I'd say the 3-plex and another 3-plex. Like those properties give me the more income than all the other ones combined. And I realized, I mean, one is because I was smarter when I bought those, and the early ones I didn't know what I was doing, but they happen to work better in my area. So what I've been doing since figuring that out is I've only been buying those type of properties that I recognized were doing really, really well, and I stopped buying the ones that weren't. For example, single family houses and junky little $30,000 single family houses. They weren't giving me any income. They were taking 80% of my time, though, but they weren't giving me the 80% income, right?
Thank you for accepting and realizing this.
Yeah, so I stopped buying in Detroit. No, but like that was a huge one. Another way, like, I look at my tenants and I realized 20% of my tenants gave me 80% of my headache, and it was, I mean, even more severe. I'd say it was like 1% of my tenants were giving me 50 or 75% of my headaches.
Yes.
And so what we started doing was
exactly right.
Yeah, we got in the practice of firing tenants. We would just like not renew their lease, or if they were on a month to month, we'd just be like, all right, well, sorry, it's been a good run, see you later. And we've been doing that consistently, and it freed up so much mental bandwidth in our life. Like I don't need them.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely. And see, it's true of tenants, and I get lots of these podcast interviews with marketers and retailers and entrepreneurs, and I say it's never occurred to most people that you can fire customers and you can fire clients.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's no rule that if you're a consultant, there's no rule that says you have to keep working with this client. Or like a bunch of CPAs. I gave a talk to a bunch of CPAs, and I said, how many of you, you've got these clients and their tax returns are just awful, right? And the people aren't even nice to you. I said, I give you all permission. You paid all this money to come to this seminar, and you got an airplane. I, Perry Marshall, officially give you permission to fire them. I said, how many of you know who it is that you need to fire? And like these hands kind of, they're like,
yep.
Yeah. Yes, it's okay. And like, you don't have to be mean about it. You can be really nice. Maybe you can even help hand them off to somebody else, but like, good riddance.
Yep.
We lose money on these people.
We have a rule here with our sponsorships. It's the same thing. I mean, back in the day, we had to fire a few advertisers for the same thing. It's like, these guys are drama. They're creating problems. There's always issues, and you're spending the vast majority of your time on one or two people. Get rid of them. Drama free. All right. Okay. So you're giving up some money. Well, fill it with somebody else who's going to give you the money without the headache. Same thing for a landlord. Get rid of the drama tenants. Get the tenants without drama. I mean, people, services are replaceable. And so it's worked very well for us, and I think it's a fantastic theory that anybody and everybody listening should figure out, how does this apply to my business, to my real estate life, to my personal life. It's really important.
It applies everywhere, and one of the things that I talk about in 80-20 sales and marketing is that people are very, very conditioned to think that they're just supposed to be busy all the time, and they're always doing stuff, to be messing with stuff. And problem customers and problem clients and problem properties and problem projects, they chew up our time and they keep us busy and they make us feel productive, when in fact, let's take this a little deeper. I've got this friend named Len Bertain. He's got this thing called the 20-1-20 rule. Listen very closely, because this is really clever and it's really true. 20% of what you sell, or 20% of your properties, so in real estate, 20% of your properties make 120% of your profit. And then the properties on the other end of this spectrum suck up 20% of your profit and bring it 120 down to 100.
Interesting.
This
I get that.
This is true of product lines in a company too. Most companies are losing money on 20% of everything they sell, and they don't know it. Most of your subscribers are losing 20% of their profits on properties that actually lose money, but they don't know they are losing money. It's buried in the data somewhere. It's in the noise. They haven't figured it out. But if you can figure it out, like, guess what? If you sold that building at a loss, even if you lost $10,000, you would actually make more money. But again, they don't know it.
Yeah.
It's invisible.
And it is.
How does somebody?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, it is very easy to lose those numbers. I mean, there's been, multiple times, whether it's on a flip, on a rental, whatever, where years could go by and I'm losing money. But you can kind of hide it, especially with things like tax benefits and all those other things. And, hey, maybe it'll appreciate and all this stuff. But, yeah, I totally see that in my business as well.
So what do you say to somebody who finds that, right? Hey, okay, I mean, if this is a general rule of the universe, so to speak, how can we identify these losers and get rid of them? I mean, obviously that's kind of, just having a fact that, oh, there's a rule is meaningless. It's actually taking action once you've identified it, right? So,
well, it starts with knowing that it's almost dead certainty that it's true. Like, okay, once in a while there might be an exception, but pretty much you can count on. I'll give you several ways to use this. So if I say, if you've never done a really thorough vetting of all these numbers, I pretty much guarantee you that 20% of what you're doing is losing you money. And you go, no, I don't really think so. It's like, no, go back and check again, because I guarantee you it's true. Okay, go find it. Now this is hugely liberating if you realize, like, okay, let's say that for whatever reason, bad economy or bad circumstances or whatever, you're having a bad year and you're losing money. One of the most comforting things that you could possibly know is that you could make probably 70% as much money as you're making with 30% as much work.
Yeah.
Or that if you just know, if you got rid of the right 20% of customers or the right 20% of tenants or the right 20% of properties, you would go from in the red to in the black overnight, and your amount of work would go down. And then the number of checks and bills coming in and out of your checking account would go down, right? But you just don't know this. Or here's a different version. I call it the principle of the $2,700 espresso machine, and this definitely applies to real estate. Okay, and here's what it is. So, if you have 1,000 people every week or every day, going through Starbucks, and let's say you got a Starbucks store, and every day 1,000 people buy at least a $3 coffee. Okay, well, 80-20 tells you that 20% of those would spend 4 times as much money, and 20% of those would spend 4 times as much money, and 20% of those would spend 4 times as much money, which means there's actually a fixed number of people that for every 1,000 people that spend $2.70 on a cup of coffee, there's like 1 person or 10 people that would buy a $2,700 espresso machine. Actually, it's about 1 person. Okay, it pretty much guarantee that every 1,000 people that buy a cup of coffee, 1 will buy a $2,700 espresso machine. Why? Because the laws of the universe, the laws of cause and effect, say that there is bound to be people with that much money that's burning a hole in their pocket, and they want to scratch the coffee itch. So they will buy their $5.60 latte and their Miles Davis CD and whatever else they get there, and they will take home a $2,700 espresso machine, and they'll put it on the counter, and then they'll come back tomorrow and they'll buy another latte, even though they have an espresso machine at home. It's gleaming, okay? They may never use it. They may use it every day. They may give it to their mother-in-law who uses it every day or doesn't use it. But like the math, it's pretty much guaranteed. Well, it's also true in real estate. So like in the book, I show how you could take a stadium. You could say, I've got 63,000 seats in the stadium, and a game sells for like $100 a seat. You can figure out exactly how many people will buy $250,000 skyboxes in the same stadium. And 80/20 will tell you pretty much dead on how many there are. It's spooky. It is absolutely spooky. But then you suddenly realize, wow, okay, so I've got this. So I went to a hotel. I spoke to this hotel group. Of course, those guys are selling real estate. They're just selling it one night at a time. And
Sure.
And I told them, well, for every $89 room that you sell, there's somebody that'll buy the $1,200 a night suite. And I said, what you guys should do? I said, I bet none of you have done this. I said, I bet if you had an entire floor where every room had like 5 video screens, all the families with kids that play Minecraft, they would take that room, they would hook all their iPads and their, computers up to the screens, and their kids would like do gaming, and you could charge like $300 a night for a special gaming room. And I guarantee the money is there. Like for the math says for every certain number of $89 hotel rooms, there is a person who would spend $300.
Yeah.
So who are they and what do they want?
That's
great.
That's very
Makes
cool.
a lot of sense.
Well, okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here because we'll spend 4 hours talking on this stuff. So I'm going to go specifically to direct mail marketing. As a direct marketer, you've probably been involved somewhat with mail. So this is something that a lot of real estate. Okay, good. So you get where we're coming from. A lot of real estate investors will use that. Now, the interesting part about real estate is that we are not. A lot of people listening to this show right now might be thinking, well, I'm not selling anything. I'm buying. I'm a buyer. But at the end of the day, like, we are sending out letters trying to sell ourselves or our service to them. Like, we are salespeople, which is why I wanted to have you on the show and why me and Josh wanted to have you here, because we are sellers. We're salespeople. So
I wanted you to. Barry. I'm just saying, Brandon takes all the credit.
I
but,
do. I added you. Come on. Let's talk about direct mail marketing. What works? I mean, what are some general best practices? What have you seen work well? What should people know before they get into that? So
the most important thing is the list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the list is all important in marketing, and this actually brings me to my friend John Paul Mendoza came up with this called the 5 power disqualifiers. That there are 5 things that are always true every time anybody sells something, and you want these 5 things to be true of the people on a list if you're gonna mail. So here's what they are: is number 1, they have the money, okay, or they have the property, or they have the property that's worth the money, right? Okay. Number 2, they have a bleeding neck. Now, what that comes from the emergency room. If you go to the emergency room and your arm is broken, you think you're having this massive crisis, and the lady's like, "Okay, so take a magazine, a clipboard, and sit down over there, right?" And you sit there for 2 hours with a broken arm, right? But if you walk into the emergency room and blood is squirting out of your aorta, they won't make you fill out the clipboard, right? Because their definition of emergency is different than yours, right?
Yeah.
Well, people spend money or sell property or whatever because they have a bleeding neck. I mean, this is a huge thing. Like whether you're buying businesses or buying properties or whatever, you have to realize that people sell properties and businesses and cars, or even get out of marriages or whatever, for very emotional reasons that often don't have anything to do with the immediate thing, right? There was a divorce, or there was a massive change in the family, or the kids got to go to college, or they have this sudden need for some money or something, or they got a new job and they're moving to Denver to go hang out with Josh or whatever. And like, they got to get rid of this thing, right? So that's bleeding neck. The third one is they buy into your unique selling proposition, which as a buyer, it's like one person wants to tear the thing down and the other person wants to renovate it, and they would never ever want it torn down. So they resonate with your renovate story, right? That's your unique selling proposition. Okay. They have the ability to say yes. Tons of people, salespeople, we try to do deals with people that can say no, but they can't say yes. We're talking to the spouse, but we're not talking to the real decision maker. And then the last one is it fits their overall plan. So, okay, some other direct mail things. You can hire companies that will hand address mail for you. You can send out 1,000 hand addressed letters, and a hand addressed letter with an actual stamp on it is much more likely to get opened. Another one is a personal, like, hi, my name is Brandon. Hi, my name is Josh. Hi, my name is Perry. And let me, tell you a little bit about myself. The headline, of course, is extremely important. And then you start getting into things like, well, do I make them? What's the call to action? Do I want them to call? Do I want them to go to a website? Well, lately, what seems to work, and we didn't premeditate this, and I didn't discuss this with you, but I know a lot of real estate people. What works is custom URLs, personalized URLs, where you are then retargeting the person on using Facebook or Google or other platforms where they visited your site, they want to see what you're doing, but now your ads kind of follow them around, so you have more than one shot at them. It's actually very easy to do this on Facebook. So there's a few things for direct mail, and I love direct mail. Like, direct mail is not going away. That guy in the blue suit that comes to your house and delivers letters, he's going to keep doing that till the end of time, probably. It's super useful.
That's cool.
That's
and I
really,
never thought
really valuable.
It is, yeah. And I never thought about the retargeting thing. I mean, retargeting is very popular with web business. I mean, BiggerPockets, we do some retargeting where if you might come to our website and then later we might hit on Facebook, be like, hey, you might like this webinar, you might like this book, right? It's very common, but in real estate, I never thought about that, sending people to my house buying website. And if they go there, put them on a list and retarget them forever, right? Because then every time they're on Facebook, or every few times on Facebook, they happen to see this little ad for, Brandon's house buying service. And eventually, when they have that neck, when that neck splits open and it's bleeding, they're going to call me because they've been seeing me for the last 3 months on Facebook. And
typical. You're looking for the bloody neck people.
That's all I'm looking for.
No, it's great. It makes they're the ones with the need, right?
And you can do this. You can do this on Facebook, and you can do it on Google, and you can do it on YouTube all at the same time. And so it's like a 360. And look, if you do this, you will be ahead of 99% of the real estate people because they haven't caught up with the internet marketers. And this, by the way, this isn't very hard to do. You put a little piece of code on your website and you have like 5 YouTube videos. They could be shot on your cell phone. Okay. But, if you got some tips or you want to just have a conversation with buyers, you got several different kinds of conversations. You put those up there. You can run little banner ads and you can adjust, like, are you bombarding them, or are you just kind of showing up every couple of days? You get to decide all that. You get to decide how long it is. But retargeting lists are very powerful. And if you've been, putting stuff out there for months and months and months, you can accumulate a sizable retargeting list, and then all of a sudden something new comes up and you can push that out to a bunch of people and it shows up in their Facebook feed literally 10 minutes from now. It's very powerful.
That's awesome.
That's great. So in terms of the testing on the mail, how important is that? And if somebody isn't getting a great response, what would you recommend they do?
Testing is hugely important. So 80/20 says, so if in my 80/20 sales and marketing book, or you can go to 8020curve.com, which is one of my websites, you'll see that if you put 80/20 on a curve, it looks like it looks like this exponential graph. And what'll happen if you test 10 different letters two of them will get 60 to 80% of the response. So like the more things that you test, the more likely you will get an outlier that's significantly better than all of the others. And a huge mistake that people make is they don't test enough and they don't try enough different kinds of things.
So we did this with not a real estate example, but when we did we launched the book on rental property investing that I wrote, we had a dozen titles that we came up with, and we went on Facebook and kind of did the Tim Ferriss method of I did Facebook ads for different book titles. Some of those book titles were getting 0.5% click rate, and one of them got like a 3.5% click rate. So of course the one that got the high click rate was called the book on rental property investing. That's why we chose that title.
That's 7x.
Yeah,
yes.
It was huge.
Yes.
Right. So had we not done that testing, we may have just gone with the initial like, hey, my gut reaction is to go with this title, and it would have been 7 times less effective. And the same thing is true, I suppose, with any of that stuff, like the
direct mail.
Yeah, you might have a terrible piece of mail because you went with your gut.
You guys, I have 20 years of professional marketing experience, and my guess is like sometimes at marketing seminars we'll have these, we'll guess which one won. Did A win or did B win? You know what my average score is?
What's that?
Terrible.
50%. Like yeah. I am no better than guessing, and I'm like you do not know what those people out there will actually respond to. Those other humans in the world are weird.
This is
awesome.
True. This is true.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Yeah. Again, I think, for direct mail marketing, just kind of to wrap up that conversation, like I think the most important thing you can do is just start. If you're trying to get into it, just start. Don't worry about, spend the next 10 years of your life testing. Get out there and start it. Get it going. Then you at least get a baseline. Would you agree with that? And then you can start making little tweaks at that point.
That's right. And you should test wildly different ideas and then get a few like really good ones and then refine them. You don't start by refining. You start by just scattershotting a whole bunch of different things. One uses fear and the other one uses desire, and the one has beautiful pictures and the other one has ugly pictures, and you just go kind of crazy with that.
Yeah.
And then you narrow down. Yeah,
love
great.
it. All right, cool. Well, kind of the last big chunk I want to talk about today is this idea of making $10,000 an hour, right? So that's part of your book. And I read that if there's one thing probably that changed my life the most from your book, if not any book I've read in the past few years, it is this one concept. I mean, and I can explain why after you explain, but what does that mean to earn $10,000 an hour? How can people do that? What does that mean?
Okay, so 80-20 is driven by power laws, and it says that everything is exponential. It's not addition, it's multiplication. And so there's the value of your time is not $10, $20, $30, $40 an hour. It's 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. And there's 1,000 times more $10 an hour silly stuff than there is $1,000 an hour stuff. And so, things like running errands and stuff like that, that's $10 an hour work. Okay. Then there's $100 an hour work, which is, like working with an important potential client or something like that. $1,000 an hour work could be like picking the right property and researching it properly and eliminating the bad stuff, and that's easily $1,000 an hour stuff. And then there's $10,000 an hour, like a negotiation, that's easily $10,000 an hour work. In fact, it could be $100,000 in 5 seconds. Okay, but you have to realize that most work is very low value, and then there's a few bits and pieces throughout your day, your week, your month, your year that are hugely valuable. So like, I'll bet you guys, if you guys went back and you look at last year, I bet if we sat together, I could probably prove to you that you made half of your money last year in 3 days.
Wow.
And you made the other.
If you add that, you add up your hours throughout the week, adds up the 3 days, you're saying?
And I'm maybe not 3 of the same days, but I'm just saying that if you looked at what you really got done last year, half of what you actually accomplished last year, you accomplished literally in 72 hours of time. Okay. And like, it was like you talked about that certain property you have that makes a whole lot more money.
Yeah.
Well, it's like whatever time you did getting that property, that time was worth 10, 20, 50 times more than all this other stuff that you did.
Yep.
Right. And so this immediately says, like, shove a ton of stuff off your plate.
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. And by that, what you recommend is using assistants and things like that. Since Brandon brought you to my world, to me, I began to see it, and I began to see the time that I spent on BiggerPockets, on the business. And, I was, this was even before Brandon, but, I realized everything I was doing was in the business, and I wasn't doing enough on the business. And so it's, this applies to real estate investors. This applies to business owners. This applies to everybody. I see it constantly. Once I saw it, I woke up and I was like, oh my God. So the average person running a business or building a portfolio, or whatever it is, I mean, you're just so in the details, doing all the mundane, everyday, day-to-day tasks. The goal is to find a way then to offshoot those tasks to other people, so you can focus and find that 72 hours and find those tasks that are going to be the most valuable. Now, obviously, there's no easy way to say, hey, well, if I look a year ahead, I'm going to know the 72 hours worth of stuff that I need to do that's going to produce it. I mean, that's impossible. But by looking overall and breaking down what it is that you do on a regular basis. So say you're a real estate investor. Well, you're running around doing errands, you're doing this, you're looking at properties, just in the past couple of months, Brandon now has 3 full-time employees on his real estate business, because he's decided, I don't want to buy the single family houses. I don't want to bang my hammer against the windows anymore. I want to start offloading more and more of the low value tasks. And so that's what we, encourage people to do and think about. Now, obviously not everybody's going to be able to do that at first. But what would you recommend kind of that first task for people who are thinking about it, who may not have a ton of money, who are saying, you know what, I should focus. This makes a lot of sense. I should focus on the important stuff. How do they go about doing that?
Well, it starts with realizing that you have to say no to a lot more things than you currently say no to. We're all conditioned and trained by everything to say yes, 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 yes. I can do this. I can do that. And half of what you're doing right now, you shouldn't be doing. Why are you doing this? Right. And you make your to-do list at the beginning of the day. Okay, how much can I cross off? And then if you have a little bit of money, now remember, if you hire an assistant, you don't have to pay him for 2 weeks. Okay. And you might only hire him for 5 hours a week, 5 hours a week, $10 an hour, 2 weeks, that's $100. Okay. So if you can figure out how 2 weeks from now, I have to come up with $100, but this is going to give me the ability to push an hour a day of stuff on to somebody else. Who wants the job? There's always people that want a $10 an hour job. Yeah. Right? Then you got 2 weeks to clear some stuff off your plate, move from $10 an hour stuff just to $100 an hour stuff, real actual $100 an hour. There's a lot of that laying around. Not to mention the 1,000 and the 10,000, but you'll actually be surprised. There's surprisingly a lot of $1,000 an hour work that it gets pushed off. It gets procrastinated. Most of us do $10 an hour work to procrastinate the $1,000 stuff.
True.
That's true. Yeah. So here's a tangible example. And when I say that this book changed my life in a lot of ways, I mean, here's one example of it. So last year, I hired an assistant. After reading this book, I was like, okay, I'm getting an assistant. So I went and got an assistant and searched wide and far and found this amazing lady who took over a lot of the stuff that I just wasn't. I mean, even some of what she's doing might be even $100 an hour tasks. I mean, for example, she started printing all of my direct mail letters and started sending them out and kind of being in charge of that side of things because I just wasn't doing a very good job of it. So another thing she was doing was answering phone calls, which I also don't like doing. I wasn't doing a good job of. So one of these phone calls came in. Somebody called. They saw an ad on a website, and I think maybe we hit them with a letter as well. And they called, and they talked to her about wanting to sell their house. She went and looked at the property. She toured it. She built a relationship. I showed up for 1 hour to look at the property, negotiated right there, and I closed the deal. Then I brought in a partner who helped manage the entire process. I showed up maybe 4 times just to check things out. So maybe 2 hours of work, right? At the end of the day, I signed papers at the title company. I made $25,000 personally on that flip. I maybe had 5 hours into the entire thing. That was a $5,000 an hour job. I was able to do what I do best, and that's the negotiation, run the numbers, and sign paperwork. And I mean, that's not to say every day is not like that. I'm still terrible at it. I struggle with it. But that's just one good tangible example of because I let go and let other people do their job, the $100 an hour or $5 or $10 an hour tasks, it enabled me to do more. And Josh, I know you don't have to tell him, but a billion stories at BiggerPockets. I mean, BiggerPockets is up to how many employees now? I don't know, a ton?
21 people in Denver alone. So,
and every one of those are doing jobs that you used to do by yourself, which is crazy, which is why is BiggerPockets blown up over the last few years? Because Josh Dorkin now can do his $100,000 an hour tasks if he wants to, because that's what he does as CEO. And I just think it's a perfect example of that. So, yeah.
So
why am I on this podcast with you guys?
I don't know. This is a $5 an hour task, Josh. That's what I get paid to do this podcast. So
no, not with Perry here.
Okay,
7.
But really, this is what every investor and entrepreneur should aspire to do: is get rid of their jobs. Yeah. Get rid of. You should try as soon as possible to get rid of 80% of your job and just do the 20% that's really valuable. And guess what? You'll find out there's another 20% because there's a 20% inside every 20%. And you just keep climbing that thing, and you'd be really surprised at how much money you can actually make with not huge amounts of time.
And to add on that, one thing that you mentioned in the book as well that had made a huge impact on me is you said, if you could free up 80% of your day, yes, you could fill the rest with work and more money, but more importantly, you could fill that up with time with your kids or with your family or vacation or what you love to do, right? You don't have to fill that time with, with work.
And for the workaholics out there who bristle when you say that, because they do, okay? All right? I want to really plant something important in your mind is that you cannot be your entrepreneurial best. You cannot do your best thinking. You cannot be as insightful as you need to be. You can't be as resourceful as you need to be when your time is constantly crammed with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
The $10 an hour stuff kills the $10,000 an hour stuff.
Yes.
You will get some of your best ideas when you're pushing your kid on the swing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or riding your bike or swimming or whatever it is that you love, or going to a rock concert. There is a period in most entrepreneurs' lives where you got to do the 14 hours a day for a year or two.
Yep.
This should not be your whole life.
Yeah.
You should not be burning the candle at both ends for years and years. If you've been doing that, you're doing 80-20 all wrong.
Yeah.
Guarantee you.
Yeah. I did that. I was the guy guilty of that because I didn't know. I was so stuck that I couldn't pull out. And that happens to a lot of people. It's interesting. I started, speaking of 80-20, I started taking my Wednesdays off.
Yeah.
So that's 80-20 right there, 20% of my week. I no longer come into the office anymore. And it's funny because, everybody here is like, Josh, they try to book me on Wednesdays. They try and schedule meetings. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. You can't take that time because that's the time I'm using for deep thinking. It's the time for outside networking. It's the bigger activities that I know that if I come into the office, no matter what, even if I have the day blocked off completely, I'm not going to be able to devote myself to those activities in the same way that if I just say, I'm not coming in, I'm still going to work, obviously, but I'm going to focus on those big picture things. It makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yes, it does. It does. So just kind of You really have to train yourself to get rid of this. Oh, I got to be busy. I got to be doing something. I got to be in action. How about some space? Okay. How about like sit in front of the river on the park bench with your cup of coffee and with your dog or whatever in the morning and go, okay, so what am I really going to do today? Not be on your cell phone, not be on your computer, not be doing deals. Like,
that's the key right there, by the way, is getting rid of those devices too. I mean, getting that stuff away to think, go on walks. Just
that's big. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
I went on a walk today.
I did too.
Twice.
Nice. Well,
that's great.
One last thing I'll mention before we head on to the the end of the show, just kind of a funny anecdote, but after reading your book, this I don't know if it helped my marriage or made it kind of funny, but in terms of, and I'm sure you probably heard this before, every time my wife now asks me, I stopped mowing the lawn at that point. I stopped doing the dishes for the most part. I stopped, right? So I tell every time my wife's
I did the same thing. Right? It was your fault, by the way.
Good. Yeah, my wife's like, hey, can you take the trash out? Hey, that's like a $10 an hour job, like, right? And but on that note, I tell her the same thing. I'm like, you shouldn't be doing that either necessarily. Like, she's running our rental business. She's managing 50 some tenants. Like, her best effort is not spent doing our dishes. So my assistant, who does also my lead acquisition stuff, she comes over several times a week. Sometimes if we have a problem, like, hey, can you just do these dishes? Like, and I feel kind of stupid doing that. And I used to make fun of people for that all the time. Like, oh, the rich hoity-toity rich guy hiring someone to do his lawn care, like doesn't know work ethic, right? I had it all wrong. Like, because of those things, I mean, I quadrupled my income and work half as much last year because of these choices I specifically made in my life.
Well, the easiest the easiest thing to outsource is stuff like that. Okay. If you're going to outsource Google AdWords, or if you're going to outsource, looking for really great properties, that's like a super high dollar per hour, high skill job. Yep. Okay. Pounding nails in the wall to hang a picture, mowing a lawn, shoveling snow, doing dishes. The best $400 a month I spend is on the cleaning ladies who come on Thursday and make my wife happy.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The house is clean and my wife is happy, right? And somebody wants that job. Now, there is a fine line, because like if you become a prima donna and you're not willing to like take out the trash, that's bad. I am not advocating
of course
that. But most of us, like, you could easily take 2 hours off of tons of people's life by somebody does the laundry, somebody cooks, somebody shops, somebody goes to the grocery store, somebody takes your car to the mechanic, somebody changes the furnace filters. You can make a big long list of stuff like that, and it's gone.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
I will say
now,
the
your 14-hour day.
It's back, right? You got it. You got the time to do whatever it is you want to do. Yeah.
And you need to read. You need to spend time with your kids. You need to educate yourself. You need to take a day off every week. People need to take a day off Sabbath's been around for 4,000 years. Okay. It's a really good idea.
I got rid of most of my tasks. The one I kept is the mowing the lawn. Not the mowing the lawn, but the shoveling the snow. And I'm still torn on it. I like doing it because I don't like going to the gym. I hate going to the gym. I don't want to be around sweaty people and going to the gym. This is like, the once every 2 weeks that I can, build up my muscles without throwing my kids around. It's shoveling snow. It's my workout. I love it.
If you like it, that's fine. Because, for most people, there's not that many things like that they actually do like, right? And they're not good for you, right?
Yep. No, but get rid of all the junk. Exactly. And don't listen to Brandon, by the way. Do not tell your wife you're not going to do the dishes. That is $10,000 an hour work, because if you say that, she's going to divorce you, take half. And it's going to cost you.
This is true. Now,
I heard it here first.
I will say the caveat there is I will always do them before I make her do them, right? I mean, she might just volunteer to do them, but like I'll do them before she does, and here's why. She's raising a baby. I mean, we're both raising a baby girl, right? But she is the mom. Like, she's there. So every minute she's doing dishes, where my little girl is in the other room. My wife is an infinity or an infinite like dollar per hour, right? Like she's missing out on. Like if we miss out on her first steps, like what is that value per hour? And we were doing dishes, right? Like, yeah,
right. And you can buy yourself a lot of sanity.
Yeah.
For $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a month from these various kind of people, you can buy yourself a lot of space and a lot of sanity, and your stress level goes down, and you're able to think, and then now all of a sudden, oh, what is that 20% of my portfolio that's losing this money? Now you have time to figure that out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I love that. And one thing you just kind of, and this is, you mentioned in the book, if only everybody that was in these sales or leadership positions did that, we'd fix the unemployment problem overnight, right?
Yes.
There are people who need those jobs.
Yes, literally. If I figured this out, if everybody who makes over $100,000 a year went and got themselves a personal assistant, it would get rid of like a third of the unemployment or something like
awesome.
that. I ran the numbers one day. It's something somewhere in that vicinity. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
I love it.
Awesome.
Love it. All right. Well, hey, let's move on to the last segment of the show. Now, normally we have a fire round here, which are questions taken direct from the BiggerPockets forums. But because this is not a real estate focused show, we're gonna just skip that and move right on to the fire or to the famous four. So let's do this, Josh. You ready, Josh?
Let's do it.
All right. This is the famous
four.
We actually have sound effects that go there. Whatever. All right.
It's classic, though.
It is classic. All right. These are the questions from the famous four. We ask these same four questions every week to every single guest. And so we're going to throw them at you right now. The first question, though, may or may not relate to you. I don't know if you'll have a good answer to this one, but never know. Do you have a favorite real estate book? And we'll alter that a little bit, like a personal development book.
Real estate book. Well, let me give you a couple different answers for that. Personal development book. I think the best one ever written is the book of Proverbs in the Bible. That saved my bacon more times than anything. I think one of the biggest insights that I ever had about real estate is real estate in Google Ads, and the most important real estate in a Google ad is the domain name. Okay?
Agreed.
And domain names are real estate. And the domain name that you choose affects the click-through rate of your ads hugely. And if you test different domain names, it's just like testing different headlines. You get a 7-to-1 difference. So for me, it's the real estate of domain names that is kind of my answer.
All right.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
Next
Awesome.
question.
Awesome. Next question. What is your favorite business book?
My favorite business
Not
book,
yours.
No, it's probably The Star Principle by Richard Koch, and he also wrote the 80/20 book. But Richard grew his wealth as a private equity investor from $4 million to $400 million.
Pretty good.
In 25 years. Okay, so I mean he's worth close to $500 million now, and that is his formula for doing it. And it's fairly straightforward. In fact, Richard and I have a website, starprinciple.com, where you can take any business and you can score it. But that is a phenomenal book. It's the most underrated business book.
Awesome. Cool. Have to check it out. What about hobbies? What do you do for fun when you're not marketing and figuring out all this cool stuff?
I build stereo equipment. In fact, I've got a set of speakers in here that I made, and I find that when I work on my little passion projects, that there's this funny way that insights about the other stuff I'm working, like stuff works itself out when I'm doing what I love. And like, I think if you don't have a hobby that you can really like just feel super awesome about, you need to resolve that somehow.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I love it.
All right.
Cool.
Last question from me anyway. What do you believe sets apart successful, I'll say real estate investors, entrepreneurs, whatever, from those who give up or they fail or they just never get started?
I think there's always a point in every entrepreneur's career where they figure out that they have to say no to something that's holding them back. They have to quit something even though they thought that persistence was the most important thing in the world, or they have to say goodbye to a relationship even though relationships were the most important thing in the world, or they have to get rid of their baby even though their baby, their pet project or whatever. It's letting go of something that's keeping you tethered to how things used to be.
Yeah, that's deep. That is deep.
Yeah, I'm sitting here just pondering it right now. Wow. Okay, you're going to have me thinking about this one. All right, before we let you go, Perry, where can people find out more about you? And I know you've got the website and the books and everything, so take a minute to plug away.
So you can get 80/20 Sales and Marketing on Amazon for about $16, or you can actually get it for a penny plus shipping, which will make it $7 in the United States if you go to perrymarshall.com/8020. We actually, I literally almost like tape dollar bills to these books to send them out. And the reason is because it gets people into my funnel. And if you do that, you'll get into my funnel and you'll see how we do marketing. And we do some very clever things. And I've got testimonials all over my website where marketers say, I have learned so much about marketing by watching how you do emails and how you market to your own audience because you eat your own dog food. You'll see a spectacular example of 80/20 Sales and Marketing if you buy 80/20 Sales and Marketing for $7. So you can go to perrymarshall.com/8020 and you can get that.
Cool.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, Perry, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really do appreciate it. And folks, if you want to reach out to Perry, you can go check out his website. You're also on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I am. And it was a really pleasure to have you both on. And it's delightful to me when somebody takes this book and they change their life. I mean, there's nothing an author likes more than when somebody gets it.
Yep.
Like it's not about selling a book.
Yep.
It's about what happened to Brandon. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, Perry. We'll see you around.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, guys, that was Perry Marshall. A big thanks again to Perry. I know why you're so passionate about this guy. I learned all about him through you and the principles and applied them to BiggerPockets, applied them to my own life. And it was a pleasure getting to meet him and talk to him and actually being able to share this with our audience, because I think it's so important. So many of our people are out there, focused and wasting their time on those activities that really aren't bringing them the value that it should be. And so I'm just pumped. That was fantastic.
Yeah. And I like that he said, he did imply or say, every entrepreneur might have to put in a year or two of that really hard work. At the beginning, we all did, right? I think the question is if you're listening to the show right now and you're in that mood or you're in that mode where you're just doing everything, you don't have to make changes overnight, but just pick one. I mean, I'll just challenge you guys. I mean, right now, pick one thing that you're doing and find somebody else, your lowest dollar per hour task that you don't like doing, and get someone else to do it. I know for me, one thing that made a big impact was hiring somebody just to answer phones because I hated talking to tenants. So I don't talk to them anymore. I hired somebody who answers them, and then they go to me, and then I go back to them, and then they call the tenant back. I just do not want to talk to tenants. It doesn't cost me very much money, but it's something that alleviated hours of week of time so I could focus on things that made more money. So pick one thing in your business this week and find a way to outsource it.
Yeah. And a quick tip on that would be using virtual assistants.
Yep.
You can use a site like Upwork, which is a fantastic marketplace of people looking for tasks to do. And so, if it's answering phone, can you go on Upwork and look for somebody who does phone answering? There's people who do that. There's people who do pretty much anything you could think of for money. Frighteningly enough with some of those things, but go check out Upwork. I've been using that site for years and years and years, and it's a remarkable way to start offloading a lot of the little things that you don't necessarily want to be doing or may not even be good at doing.
Yep.
So check it out. Cool. Well, it's good to be back. Good to have you back, and going to be seeing you this week, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to come hang out with you. In fact, we're gonna have some good conversations about some secret projects you and I are working on. So,
fancy. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So, cool, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening, Brandon. Good times, and thank you for getting Perry. That was great, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
All right.
Take us out of here.
Oh, all right. Don't mind if I do. For BiggerPockets.com, this is Josh Dorkin and Brandon Turner signing off.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
All right, for those of you who weren't paying attention last week here on the Bigger Pockets podcast, we decided to introduce a little, just as a kind of a fun little ploy for a couple little episodes here, this little Easter egg here where we're going to call it the Random 5. You like that, Josh?
Random 5.
Random 5. All right, so we're going to ask Perry 5 quick questions that are completely random. See what he's got to say about it. So number 1, if you could have tea with one fictional character, who would it be?
One fictional
character, yeah.
Gandalf.
Ooh, good choice.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What do you value most? Free time, recognition, or money?
I value my time, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like space, I need space.
Perfect. Excellent.
All right. What is one thing you're deeply proud of, but you would never put on a resume?
Never put on a resume.
Figure skating trophy.
Let me think about that for a quick second. I'm proud that my wife and I fought our way through some really nasty marriage stuff. I don't think you would put that on a resume, but not everybody gets through that unscathed. And wealth tip, like probably top 10 is don't get divorced.
Awesome. All right.
Is it my question or yours? Yours.
I got this. What is the title of your future memoir?
Oh man. How we triggered the second Renaissance.
Ooh. Fancy.
Fascinating. Yeah. Last question, Brandon.
I gotta ask, what is the second Renaissance? What is that? I gotta know.
Well, the first one was 500 years ago, and the second one's long overdue.
All right.
And it hasn't started yet.
All right.
People need to wake up. I think if we get 1% of the people to wake up, we could have one.
I like
would be pretty exciting.
I like it.
It will be pretty exciting. How's that?
There you go. Much better.
Yeah.
All right, last question. What are you most grateful for right now in this moment?
I'm grateful for God, love, and wisdom, which are all the same thing.
Awesome.
Right
and
on.
if there's anything you should pursue in your life, there you go. That's it.
Cool. I love it. All right. Thanks, Perry.
All right, Perry. Thanks.